This is America's first greatest generation. People from all walks of life who experienced the Revolutionary War and then lived into the age of photography in the 1840s and 1850s. In the early 1800s, the United States government created a new set of legislation, pension acts, meant to guarantee a monthly payment to aging veterans of the Revolutionary War. But many of these old soldiers had no evidence of their service, so instead they went to their local courthouses and magistrates and recorded detailed oral memoirs of their Revolutionary War service. Over 80,000 applied for pensions, and this amazing trove, the nation's first veterans oral history project, sat largely unutilized in federal archives for over a century. The museum's pension project pairs those pension memoirs with today's generation of veterans, asking veterans to reflect on similarities and differences between their service and that of people over 2 centuries ago.
Early in the spring of 1778, I enlisted as a private soldier for a term of 12 months in a volunteer corps of cavalry under the command of General Thomas Nelson as captain, George Nicholas as first lieutenant, and Hugh Nelson as second lieutenant, all of the state of Virginia. The said corps of cavalry amounting to 100 men who embodied, organized, and trained at a small town in the county of Caroline, Virginia called Port Royal. This corps was raised by Captain Thomas Nelson of Yorktown, Virginia, in pursuance of the recommendation of Congress of the 2nd of March, 1778.
Robert Bolling was a Virginian. He was born in 1759 near Petersburg. He first enlisted in 1778 as a cavalry soldier, a soldier assigned to ride a horse into battle or on scouting expeditions. And in 1780, he became a captain, a leader of a company of cavalry soldiers. He served on different tours throughout the Revolutionary War in Virginia. For his entire life, Robert Bolling preserved a note written to him in 1781, tasking him with taking command of a cavalry unit. It was written by the governor of Virginia. That governor was Thomas Jefferson. When he was 73, Robert Bolling applied for a pension in 1832. He was awarded that pension.
Kirby Smith, I'll be reading the pension of Captain Robert Bolling of the state of Virginia. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve and also a government civilian, worked as software management. And born and raised in Yorktown, Virginia, so the American Revolution is near and dear to my heart. One of the biggest qualities that I routinely see, especially looking at the pensions, is realizing that just like today, you do understand your service to your country, and for them, the country was brand new. You know, they consider themselves, in most cases, Virginians or Pennsylvanians before they would consider themselves an American. The concept of being an American was still new, and it was still being forged at the time, and still, continued to be forged even after the war was over. But it was a matter of mindset of, why are we fighting, and who are we fighting for? In some cases, you don't know as you're riding from town to town. Who am I? Especially in Virginia. Virginia is still a very split state at the time. By the late 1770s. Are we going to go somewhere where they're supportive of what we're doing, or are we going to run into maybe a population that's not going to support us? That's where it's interesting reading pensions on both sides, because sometimes you read a British pension and you're kind of like, well, I find that very relatable, based on my experience in Afghanistan, because they're fighting an insurgency and I fought an insurgency. And then you're looking at the Continental or the militia pension for the Americans and some of the things they talk about, and it's kind of like, okay, well, the way you're talking about it is kind of an insurgency, which in some cases I can't relate to, but I can from the other side. It is a fact that I rendered military services beyond the periods expressed in my certificate, but as our country was then invaded by a powerful enemy and the whole of the inhabitants were thrown into great consternation and distress, I have limited the periods of my defined services much within the extent of the public duties I have performed. You must also allow something for the great lapse of time and its operation upon the human mind, since those events occurred. I wish therefore to be very guarded in my statements, and had rather give up much to my country than to take 1 cent improperly from her. At a young age, I realized that I had a passion for history and a passion for public history. Yeah, even if we were just going on a battlefield tour, not even to a reenactment or to a living history event, would dress up in my little outfit and we'd go around the battlefield, go to various historic sites. Still do that a lot. Drag my family around and do some of the same things. Growing up in the living history community, regardless of what era you were doing, back in the 1980s and 1990s, there were a lot of veterans. But it really wasn't until high school that I actually given any serious thought to going into the service. So I don't come from a family that has traditional long background in military service. One of my grandfathers was a combat medic during World War II. But I think being a senior in high school when 9/11 happened really kind of helped change my direction in life. I knew once we got home the evening of 9/11, all of the footage was going on, and I was contacted by my grandfather, the World War II medic, and he said, "I know how you feel right now, and I know what's going through your mind, and I don't want you to make any rash decisions. I want you to talk to me. Let's sit down and have a discussion before you make any choices." Because he had experienced the same thing with Pearl Harbor. So he knew exactly what was on my mind. So his recommendation was, well, you probably should go to ROTC. He said, "You've got the smarts for it. You apply yourself, go through the program, come out the other end as an officer, and then go into the service." And fortunately, that's the way that things worked out. Early in the year 1780, I, in the capacity of captain, enlisted a number of men and formed a volunteer corps of cavalry by the direction of Colonel John Bannister of Dinwiddie County, who was then the commander of the Dinwiddie Militia. I marched said troop of cavalry on being organized to a small town in the county of Isle of Wight called Smithfield, and there joined a large body of militia and served during the year. Early in the year 1781, I resumed my military duties as a volunteer captain of cavalry, and always considered myself in service from the early period of 1780 until sometime after the capture of the British Army under the command of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown in the month of October 1781. In the month of May 1781, a strong army of British troops under the command of American trader Benedict Arnold invaded the state of Virginia and advanced rapidly to Petersburg, which town they captured, though not without a gallant resistance from the militia, in which battle I was present, being under the command of General Baron Steuben, a foreigner of distinction in the service of the Continental Congress. Reading through Bolling's pension and a couple of other pensions as well, for many of them, like the American Revolution is their first experience of war combat, but there are also others who provide pensions, and you realize that they saw service before 1775, whether it was being part of Dunmore's War and being the force that went out west to fight the Native Americans in West Virginia and Ohio, what's now West Virginia and Ohio. But you also have a number of men who are veterans of the French and Indian War, so service as provincials. So I imagine that many of those men, by 1775 and 1776, as this Continental Army is being formed, it's never been formed before, many of those men are essentially serving as the infrastructure for what's being built, and they're bringing with them that experience. And that's something that I look back on my service, and I can kind of find that relatable at this point, over 20 years in the service. Having gone from reserve to active duty, back to reserve, you look back over time and it's more of okay, what lessons learned, good or bad, can I provide to the young soldiers and young officers that are coming in today? Building these task forces and building the experience to meet the mission that you're given. They're doing that, very quickly in the 1770s as well. Hey, you've got the call, you show up, you bring with you what you have, and we'll figure it out from here. I rendered military services on both sides of the James River, and after encountering many dangers and difficulties, lived to see my country in the enjoyment of peace and independence.